If you think about the U.S. economy, there is no other economy in the world that has its flexibility and adaptability. Take a look at what happened in the Great Recession. Take a look at what happened when the pandemic hit. Yes, everybody got knocked back, but distributors reacted very quickly, and they've always been very responsive to their customers. The key characteristic of distribution in general, it's an incredibly fragmented and diverse ecosystem. There are a lot of smaller companies, family-owned, multi-generation companies at a local level. You've got the mid-sized regionals, and then you've got the nationals and internationals at play. And all of them have their own unique value proposition. The real value proposition of distribution, I think, is it really has made this the most vibrant economy and really enabled the kind of growth that no other economy enjoys.
On your perspective, because you have looked at the data of a lot of different distributors, what makes a good distributor?
I always like to make it clear is, yes, revenue is a scorecard, but there's so many other aspects that really make what a great distribution company looks like. And there's no one flavor really. Modern distribution management, the way I describe it, it's a niche business media company, and that includes and market research company. We have a hybrid revenue stream because we both have membership-based content, but we also have web-based and sponsorship-driven revenue as well. I would say even more so today than 25 years ago when we were doing this research is that it's not really about size of company and resources. It's really about mindset. The last piece of data management typically for a lot of people is in their customer data. They haven't done a lot with that. And this is where MDM Analytics has really focused on trying to help and support distributors and manufacturers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Driven by DCKAP podcast. I'm your host, Karthik Chidambaram, CEO of DCKAP. We make systems talk to each other for manufacturers and distributors. We are here in the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois. It's an honor to be chatting with Tom Gale, Chief Executive Officer of Modern Distribution Management, MDM. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Tom, great to see you here in Chicago. For the audience who are not very familiar with what MDM does, can you briefly tell us about MDM and what you guys focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was founded in 1967, actually, and it was really a journal for the industry of somebody who had been the editor of Industrial Distribution magazine in the 1960s. He recognized a need or an opportunity to create more of a newsletter journal for leaders of distribution companies to really help them innovate and to examine the best practices that were happening at other companies. So he did this and really started to focus on the strategies, on the best practices, and really the whole focus was how to help distributors manage their distribution businesses better.
And MDM was started in 1967?
Yes, it was.
By who started it?
The man was named Van Ness Philip, and it was a Dutch family, upstate New York, but he got into the industry and just through publishing became really an expert, essentially working for Industrial Distribution magazine, which itself was started right around 1900. So it was, that had been for decades the magazine that covered really the core of wholesale distribution.
So you have a lot of history on distribution right there.
Yeah, so the story then where I got involved was in 1992. Actually, it was earlier than that because in Minnesota in the 1980s, I had my own marketing communications business. I was working with a lot of companies like 3M, Toro, Honeywell, a lot of great manufacturing companies up there, but also the distributors that supplied the manufacturing operations up there as well. So I got to know distribution. I was doing profiles of companies there. Got to know really all of the leaders of the distribution companies in Minnesota, and know some of them still very, very well, continue to be good friends after 40 years. But it really was an education in the value proposition that distribution brings to manufacturing at every level, really.
How do you get the domain name MDM.com? It's a 3-letter domain name and everybody loves it. How do you get that?
So I just recognized, I had done a lot of technology work actually in the 1980s in my Marcom business, and I was doing documentation for software manuals, and so I was always pretty savvy and interested in technology. So we had an opportunity in 1992. I was brought in actually by a distributor, third generation distributor, he and his brother had run a company in Minneapolis, Rusty Duncan. He brought me into this and said, hey, there's this opportunity. I'm talking with this guy who runs a newsletter. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, And 6 months later, he gave me a call. We did the deal, and we became partners in it. And so that's how I got into it. In 97 or so, I recognized that, hey, the internet is starting to evolve, and I went out and I recognized that MDM, that URL was available, so I got it. To this day, I get 2 or 3 emails a week of people who want to buy it. So yeah, it was a good URL to get.
Yeah, that's a big win. So when did you become the CEO of MDM?
So my partner was the CEO, president, and I was a vice president, and I ran the editorial, and he really kind of handled all the publishing piece of it. He actually built his own software to manage the circulation and subscriptions because he was a tech guy as well. And he was the one that actually developed the modeling that MDM Analytics is now based on. His company, he started and spun out of his family's company to start this market data company called Industrial Market Information. So we together ran MDM during the 1990s. I worked with him with his market data company as well, supporting that. We sold MDM in 1999 to a software company, MRO Software, that wanted to build a portal where everyone in the world was going to come and buy MRO supplies. So, and it was MRO.com. And it was a marketplace, and it was a .com supported entity. Then 3 years, kind of the whole .com bubble bust. And at that point, I was able to buy the company back. And so I became the sole owner. And it was really in 2002 where I really recognized there was an opportunity to develop the digital aspects because the internet was starting to mature. There was more capabilities, and really started to create more of a research-based type of a framework for MDM to cover the industry.
So we always believe in long-term thinking, and distributors also think long-term. They are all family businesses, been there for a long time. And so is MDM, and I find that very fascinating. Where do you get this long-term thinking from?
That's a good question. I think it's a combination of things. The key characteristic of distribution in general is it's an incredibly fragmented and diverse ecosystem. There are a lot of smaller companies, family-owned, multi-generation companies at a local level. You've got the mid-sized regionals, and then you've got the nationals and internationals at play. And all of them have their own unique value proposition. What I think, and this is going to go beyond answering your question, but it's the only way I know how to really address it, because if you think about the U.S. economy, there is no other economy in the world that has its flexibility and adaptability. Take a look at what happened in the Great Recession. Take a look at what happened when the pandemic hit. Yes, everybody got knocked back, but distributors reacted very quickly, and they've always been very responsive to their customers. It's just the nature of what they do, and that's how a lot of these distribution companies developed. Even in the 1800s, it's mining supply, as manufacturing developed. The whole history of distribution is really one of figuring out how to get the right piece of equipment to the right place at the right time. That has not really changed in terms of that value equation. What has changed is just all the different channels and alternate channels that have emerged, and particularly with digital, has completely changed the landscape. So what the real value proposition of distribution, I think, is it really has made this the most vibrant economy and really enabled the kind of growth that no other economy enjoys.
So you were at the right place at the right time, and you enjoyed distribution and continued doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do a lot of research, like you just talked about. You evaluate a lot of distributors and publish reports on who the top distributors in the country are on different verticals. So on your perspective, because you have looked at the data of a lot of different distributors, what makes a good distributor? Let's say if I want to be on the top of that list, what should I be doing?
Yeah, well, as you say, we across almost 24 verticals, industrial, construction, building materials. We profile each of those verticals in terms of the top 5, 10, or even longer list of the largest, and it's a revenue ranking. So, and I always like to make it clear is, yes, revenue is a scorecard, but there's so many other aspects that really make what a great distribution company looks like. And there's no one flavor really. I think more than anything else, and this actually goes back, I was fortunate enough around 2000 to co-author a book that was published by the National Association of Wholesaler Distributors. And my co-author was Bill McCleve, who was a researcher and consultant in distribution. And we put our heads together and got really interested in identifying what were the characteristics of great distribution companies around, and it was around differentiation. So we went after and identified very key aspects of what differentiation looked like in all different types of companies. Did a number of case studies, but there was a few key characteristics that emerged. One was great leadership. That was really a key thing. You needed to have essentially the leader of the company and the culture and the team was really motivated and really energized. Another key thing was really around just sort of that flexibility and the culture aspect of being able to not be so, rigid in your day-to-day that you can't really think creatively about what you do and what you do well. And strategy was a part of that, and as much, not doing everything, but really focusing on the things that really made a difference. And then the real differentiator, though, was really those who had process discipline. I mean, a lot of companies have great ideas, but they can be kind of chasing one way or another. And in a lot of ways, that's just been the nature of a lot of distribution companies because they've been really responsive and customer responsive and very close to the customer. And so, when the customer says, well, we want you to do this, that's sort of how distributors ended up developing their portfolios and their value-added services ultimately. And those value-added services is how they really differentiated. So when you say what defines a great distribution company, I think it's those companies that really know who they are, what they're really good at, and don't get distracted. They have the kind of process discipline not to go over here and go after things that may not be as profitable and as good for the long-term growth of the business.
So leadership, culture, strategy, and process.
Process, yeah, and that process discipline is that I'd say that is more in shorter supply than a lot of others. I mean, that's just the nature of business and all.
So you look only at public companies or also at private distributors? Or
no, very much private. And like I say, this is it. What's really interesting, I would say even more so today than 25 years ago when we were doing this research, is that it's not really about size of company and resources. It's really about mindset. And, you've got some smaller distributors who bat way above their grade because they're thinking creatively, they're thinking future focused. And they're able to do things in their company with the resources that they have that really differentiate what their competitors offer in the marketplace. So it's really about that, they're doing the right things in terms of communicating what their value is and then executing on it really, really well.
Running a publishing business is very hard, as you know. And, do distributors sometimes reach out to you, hey, I want to be on the top spot or maybe the third spot or something like that? Or how do you, in terms of, sometimes I also think that publishing business is mostly advertisement driven, and all that, you need the ad dollars to run. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, everybody's sort of familiar with trade magazines and, primarily a lot of magazines, they're, advertising is their revenue stream. Modern distribution management, the way I describe it, it's a niche business media company, and that includes and market research company, and that includes market data analytics component to it as well as content. We have a hybrid revenue stream because we both have membership-based content, but we also have web-based and sponsorship-driven revenue as well. So there's sort of a balance there, but it's an interesting model to operate because there's a lot of flexibility, and we look very different today. So for a good part of MDM's life until about 2002, when I started to expand some of the channels and platforms, it had been really a twice-a-month newsletter since 1967. And it was, I think back in the early 2000s, the subscription was $150 a year for 24 issues, something like that. I think we're up like $450 a year for, and now we're actually putting out a digital monthly edition and uploading and refreshing our content on a continual basis. We also put out a PDF monthly. We do an MDM Premium monthly. So, we do that, but we do a lot of webinars that are sponsored and that are, lead gen tools for the sponsors, primarily a lot of the technology companies that are selling into, but other service providers as well we work with. We podcast, we do conferences, started doing conferences in 2017. So it's really diversified in terms of what we do. A lot of the diversification over the last 20 years has been more deeply into research reports in terms of how we're able to segment and just provide a lot of insights and data around the structures of the industry, but also market opportunities. MDM Analytics. It's actually a SaaS tool, so a good part of the revenue stream is also through a SaaS subscription base where people are able to analyze what the estimated market size and segmentation of demand is across about 200 different industrial and construction related products.
I like the diversification of revenue, especially the membership part and also the SaaS MDM analytics. It's very interesting. You recently got acquired by NAW, National Association of Wholesale Distribution. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I am 69 years old, and I am, sort of thinking about what my own succession and future looks like. And so in January, we sold MDM to NAW. And as I looked at the future of MDM, the brand, and also our team, it really felt like the right place for MDM to land in terms of, if you take a look at how NAW has evolved in its long history, we have run very parallel courses. We've partnered on a lot of things. And so it was a very natural connection and combination in terms of bringing the kind of content and research expertise we have to the incredible network that NAW has also built over many, many decades as well. So it's a great combination, and I'm really excited for the future. And I've been asked to stay on and continue to help in a transition phase as well. So I'm having a lot of fun.
You don't look 69, Tom.
Oh, thanks. That's because I'm having so much fun.
Totally, yeah. And you recently won the Lifetime Achievement Award at NAW early this year. Congratulations, and thanks for all the great things you've done. How does that feel? And I'm sure that would have been a great honor for you.
Yeah, it makes me feel old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, MDM is really about the community of thought leadership. I think I've always understood the power of media platforms and building community. And that's what I'm really proud about the community because I think it's really created win-win relationships for the consultants, for the service providers. It's an incredible ecosystem that we all operate in, and ultimately it's a pretty small group of people, and just there's a whole lot of people who really support, and everybody's looking for good ideas, and to me they can come from anywhere. And so just to be really open to that, to me, that's kind of what I feel good about, is I've been able to sort of create that platform for a lot of people to come in and share, and create value for the greater industry,
Building communities, talking about communities, can you give me a practical example of how the distribution community has been able to leverage the research done by MDM and use it for their growth?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So this actually ties in a little bit to, in just a few weeks here, we're going to have our annual Shift conference. So, over the last 2 decades, I would say MDM, a lot of the focus of our research has been around technology and technology leverage and how distributors can really figure out the right fit and what the right tools are that they can do to really help their teams and just build a better business. The focus of our research about 10 years ago started to bring in addition to a lot of the digital transformation and the threats of Amazon business, really started to look at the other kind of big existential threat out there. And that is sort of the core traditional distribution models, outside sales focused, very heavily outside sales, was starting to show some cracks and get challenged by these alternate sources like Amazon Business and others. Very different cost to serve propositions, very different value propositions, and a lot of more transparency in pricing that all of a sudden opened up a lot of things that distributors didn't have to think about so much. And there was really a lot of commoditization that came with that as well. So this is turning into a long answer, but it's a pretty complex equation in terms of if you look at over the last 10 years. It was about 10 years ago when I sat down with Mike Marks of Indian River Consulting Group. And, I asked him, I said, what is the existential threat over the next 5 years? And is there something that we can partner on in terms of researching and developing some value? And his answer was the outside sales model. And so we developed, started to do some research, did some projects, but then we ultimately created an event, a conference in 2017 that we have done since, Sales GPS for many years, and we rebranded that 2 years ago to Shift. But it was really around how do you transition, and it's a very difficult proposition. You don't want to hurt the golden goose that lays the eggs, and you're not going to throw your salespeople off the bus. But many distributors have aging sales forces. Customers are very different in how they want to buy from their distributors and how they want to interact. And so, there are absolutely ways to manage that. Create a stronger inside sales framework. For some, it's creating stronger digital access, but really just making it as easy for customers to do business however they want to do business. If it's by phone, by fax, which people still do, by text, really any kind of way. So that really has formed the core of our research is really around sales process. And then if you're talking about that today, though, and what started to develop as we continued to go through this was it's really much more integrated with everything that's taking place because there's the digital transformation aspects of it. And if you're talking about digital transformation, that is really tied to how you're going to go to market, what your go-to-market model looks like if you start fiddling with those levers as well. And if you're doing that, then your data analytics really need to be good. You need to start to think about how can you really increase the quality, how do you manage your data better? And a lot of that was driven by e-commerce, right? So a lot of people went after and cleaned up their product data immediately. And a lot of people are in a pretty good place as far as their product data and, their master data management. Some have cleaned up and aligned with their supplier data. That's typically in this journey that people are on. And that's how we frame all of this because everybody's at a different stage, whether it's in their sales process journey, whether it's in their digital journey or their data analytics journey, everybody's at a different stage. And so what we try to do in our Shift conference every year is to just try to bring all these elements together, give people a lot of thoughts about what the leaders are doing in each of these areas, and actually a playbook and assessment of where they are today, and give them some guidance and really a North Star for how they can go back and start to move the appropriate pieces and move their journey forward. The data analytics piece, though, the final thing I wanted to just tie off on that is, the last piece of data management typically for a lot of people is in their customer data. They haven't done a lot with that. And this is where MDM Analytics has really focused on trying to help and support distributors and manufacturers. We license the Dun & Bradstreet database and use that to, we do a lot of clean and append work with distributors to help them clean up their customer lists, to be able to segment them better. I mean, even apply North American industry classification codes, which replaced SIC codes, which retired 20 years ago, but a lot of people are still using SIC codes. In a lot of ways, that's not bad, but it's just with the way industries have developed, you're not going to find SIC codes for electric car manufacturing. It's those types of new and emerging industries. It gives a distribution leadership team the ability to go in and look at its customer segments, look at their sweet spots, look at opportunities outside, and that's where our data, our market data, and our SaaS, we can help people identify even at the prospect level, but we can really help people identify where there's some good opportunity from around metro areas or any kind of territory for specific product categories. So
I like the word shift. You always keep shifting to bigger and better things.
Well, and that's where this really came from was, this is a shift. Everybody's in some form of shift, but it's really kind of a mindset shift in terms of business model innovation. And that's really, it's this distribution model innovation. And that's what our conference is about. And that's really the pillars of all of our research is really about, this distribution model innovation that everybody is, and particularly since the pandemic hit in 2020, everybody's been in some sort of a stage of business model innovation. Some of them have been dragged kicking and screaming, but others who embrace that quickly have seen wonderful results in terms of, how they've really developed stronger customer relationships, stronger supplier relationships, and really their teams they've been able to create higher performing teams in market conditions over these last 4 years that have been, challenging and currently sluggish. It's been tough market conditions.
I really like how calm you are. So is there anything special you do to stay calm all the time? Or?
I was on a little golfing weekend with some friends a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys in the group said, you make a bad shot and you don't swear and make a big deal out of it. How do you do that? And it's like, well, there's bigger things in life, right? There's bigger issues in life. I think it's partly, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've been studying and analyzing distribution channels for 40 years now. In my marketing communications business, there's a lot of sea changes that take place, and there's these longer term things that are taking place. I think because I have been doing it so long, it's like, you see these disruptions, and it creates these opportunities for people. And there's certain leaders who recognize that and jump on it. And we did a lot of case studies right out of when the pandemic hit. We did a live series every week, and we brought on a lot of leaders who were pivoting quickly. And, there's so many stories like that. And that's what I just find fascinating about this industry. There's a lot of really innovative leaders and great leaders in this industry of wholesale distribution. And that's what just keeps me, sort of really engaged and passionate about this industry.
So Tom, you've been in distribution for the last 40 plus years. So what's the thing that surprised you the most?
There's been economic shocks and rebounds. So, those are just normal business cycles. Beyond that, there's been a couple of major, I would say, technology and channel shifts, really. The biggest one, obviously, I think that everybody would agree on is Amazon Business and, 2013, 2014, 2015, where they were then and now 10 years later, absolutely huge. 1990s, integrated supply. Again, these are things that have all been fueled by the advance of technology in different ways. And so if you look at those, they were very disruptive at the time. Digital CD-ROM catalogs were very disruptive initially. It kind of threw everybody had to get CD-ROM catalogs going. So there's been these specific technology disruptors that have come in, but that's also forced a lot of innovation. The interesting thing around Amazon Business is that it absolutely took a chunk out of most distributors' hides in terms of, there was a certain amount of commoditized business that they lost to Amazon Business or specific channels that they got taken out. But again, I think it really helped them focus in many ways on what they do best and where they have strengths, and a lot of distributors have adapted. So I think, Amazon Business has not killed distribution. I do not predict that. It's been incredible, the growth of Amazon Business, but it's also, I think, helped distributors more clearly identify where their value-added services are going to differentiate and really help them create stronger competitive advantage.
And disruptions are very good, I think, because it always keeps you in a sense of paranoid, and only the paranoid survive.
There's a lot to that. Absolutely. Yeah. Complacency has been a challenge for this industry often, and that's where it's a mature industry, and so that's where, if you look at other industry sectors in the economy, innovators find ways to come in and disrupt with different business models, and that's where distribution business models are very strong, but they need to adapt. They need to be innovated, and you can't be complacent about it.
There's a great book on this, Only the Paranoid Survive, Andy Grove. Tom, what does the future look like for distribution?
I'm very bullish. I'm really bright on it, and for a couple of different reasons. I believe, and this gets us into artificial intelligence actually, because I really believe that, it's not a magic bullet, but it's another technology innovation that distributors can leverage if they do it appropriately. I really think in many ways it's going to help level the playing field. You do great work in terms of really helping distributors create transparency and visibility across their systems with customers, with suppliers. That's the foundation, and that's critical. I believe, though, that increasingly distributors are going to be able to automate processes. They already are in terms of leveraging AI and other machine learning. It doesn't need to be AI all the time. But I really believe this is going to not so much create competitive advantage as it's going to really help distributors of every size sort of elevate their capability to serve their customers. So that's kind of a subtle differentiation, I think, but I think that's important. So around that, where I see the role of MDM and particularly with NAW and our parallel missions and our joint missions now for the future is through a combination of research and industry coverage and this networking where we're really bringing together the best ideas and creating events and networks for people to exchange these ideas. That to me is where the real power of this industry can, defensively, fight off the challenges that are, continue to come wave after wave. That's just, cycle of history. Having that kind of an organization, I think, that is really a resource, a powerful resource, not only for information and guidance on managing and running companies, but also this community where people can come together, share their ideas, take them back and really improve and build higher performing companies. That to me is the future and how why I got so excited about the combination of MDM and NAW.
Yeah, power of community, you learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Tom, I really like the name Shift and your Shift conference is coming up. Tell us about the Shift conference. Where is it happening and who's coming?
September 11th to 13th. We're probably going to have 250 people in the room, and it's a great program. We're going to have fireside chats with John Engel of Wesco, Keith Rizolis, CEO of ABC Supply, the largest building materials, and also with John Weborg, who's the president and CEO of Stellar Industrial. They all have great stories about how they have been managing their innovation journeys, very different scales, obviously, but all great stories about digital transformation, how they're leveraging analytics and how important that has been to them, and also how they have really shifted their sales process. And that's been the key journey that the Shift Conference has tracked over the last 8 years now. And that is we're bringing into the room many different viewpoints, including some awesome keynotes by both Gartner and McKinsey teams that are focused on distribution, as well as a lot of panels of distributors and others. We're really focused on all of these transformation levers that any size distributor is able to use and put into play to create a higher performing company. That's the bottom line. And I'm really excited for it. September 11th to 13th, downtown Denver, still opportunity to register.
It looks like a great conference. And how long do you prepare usually for these conferences? You have great names speaking, and you also have McKinsey, Gartner. Not easy to pull everybody together in the same room. How do you do it? Yeah, we built some great relationships, and it's fantastic that they're willing to come in and spend some time with us. We start pretty much the cycle is right away and pretty quickly, and then the last 6 months, we try to get an agenda put together 6 months ahead of time. It's harder. Events are harder and harder. It's more crowded. But we really focus on making this very different than any other type of event that's out there in terms of the level of connection between strategic concepts and bringing into the room the stories of how distributors are tactically putting these things into practice and making some big changes and getting some great results. And so we're really connecting that strategy with the tactics. And then ultimately, we frame this at the beginning with an assessment. So we do the opening 2 hours of the conference with an assessment of where you are in your digital transformation journey, in your sales process, in your data analytics, and also in your culture. Because if you don't have the kind of team, if you're not thinking about the talent of the future to adapt and really build that
transformed company and a higher performing company, you're not going to be able to make changes. And this is all about change management. So there's also a lot of conversation, a lot of sessions around change management. And that's really the hardest work around this.
It's all about shift. And you have been doing this for 8 years, the conference?
Yes. Yeah. It was our sales GPS where we really were focused on the sales process and this transition that every distributor is going through in terms of they're shifting from a core outside sales process to a more hybrid sales where it's digital, more inside sales support, and it's more efficient. It creates deeper customer engagement because customers are buying very differently and they want to interact and get information from their distributors very differently than even 5 years ago. And that's why we focus on it that way, because it is a shift from how the traditional go-to-market models that were very successful for a long time. It's this shift to the much more hybrid sales model it is going to be the future of distribution.
Good luck with the shift, Tom. Tom, I would like to end with this question. What book are you reading right now?
I am reading Team of Rivals, which it was written by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and it is about Lincoln and his cabinet, because when Lincoln was elected in 1860, he brought on as his cabinet the 3 or 4 primary rivals who all thought they were going to beat him in the Chicago Convention in 1860 and thought that they were going to win the Chicago Convention. They lost. Lincoln kind of got in sideways a little bit, and we all know from a historical perspective sort of what happened. But he then brought all of these people who kind of, they all had egos. He all brought them into a room and made them his team to address, the biggest challenge our nation ever faced and led through that. So it's a great story about leadership, about bringing together incredible talent and the personalities that are involved in that. So I'm a big history buff.
That's a great skill to have. Tom, thank you so much for joining us on this Driven podcast. I really enjoy interviewing you, and thanks for all the great things you do, and nice meeting you.
Always love our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Driven podcast. Check out our other episodes for more, and subscribe to be the first to access every new episode.